The PlayAction Podcast is fueled by Picasso's Pizza, where every night is pizza night.
Welcome to the PlayAction Podcast. We have just finished the second day of practice at Buffalo Bills training camp. Our podcast has a little bit different look because we are speaking to you from the dorms, and maybe a little different sound from the dorms at St. John Fisher University. We're going to break this up, start with the offense in our first segment here. And Katherine, let's dive right into it. A couple impressions from you on the offense over the first 2 days.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch so far. You know, the Bills started with Red Zone on their very first day of training camp on Wednesday, and we got some great looks at Dalton Kincaid there. I know, Mark, you wrote some about that, just seeing what the second-year tight end was doing, but had some really solid touchdown passes. Josh Allen made it a point to say that there were no interceptions among the three quarterbacks the first day of training camp, so they were pretty excited about that. But it's been, you know, a chance to see a little bit more out of some of this receiving core as well. Still early, still not in pads, still hard to glean a little too much. But it's been fun to see which receivers are getting into the mix.
Yeah, that is one of the biggest storylines, wide receiver, obviously, in the absence of Stephon Diggs. As you mentioned, Dalton Kincaid, 5 TD catches. Now, granted, it was all red zone play, so they're going to score a lot of touchdowns. But, he had a great rookie year, and great is not an overstatement. But he did only have 2 touchdowns in the regular season. So good to see him assert his presence. I thought, we saw a lot of motioning from the offense in the red zone, not quite as much today here when they were working on first and second downs. They were about middle of the pack in motion, but I think that's something to keep an eye on. And then Joe Brady spoke today. Obviously the offensive coordinator isn't going to reveal any strategic secrets, but he was, I thought, interesting. I thought he really reasserted his buzzword, everybody eats. As we have written about all offseason, the big, huge questions, are they good enough at number 1 wide receiver, and are they good enough at number 2 wide receiver? I mean, you could easily make the case they're worse at both without Diggs, and they're asking a rookie to step in and be better right away than Gabe Davis. It's not a given. Joe Brady does not seem worried about that in the least. It is clear he believes the sum of the parts, the sum is going to be greater than the individual parts.
Yeah, he's got quite a few themes that he harped on today, Joe Brady. Speaking on the second day of training camp, another one was just his belief that they're going to play positionless football. You saw that with how guys are kind of getting different looks in there. Again, still early. A lot of this is just kind of install and stuff like that. But I think just kind of getting guys involved in different ways is going to be a really fun thing for this Bills offense. You mentioned some of the new guys here. Keon Coleman in particular had such a fun catch yesterday. Touchdown along the sideline that I was really impressed by. But then there's been other guys who are new to the Bills too who have been impressive as well. I thought Curtis Samuel looked great today. Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Curtis Samuel was the receiving star today. It's mostly a passing practice before pads come on. And that's going to be, that's another question. Curtis Samuel, can they get the ball deep? He's got 4.31 speed. He's faster than anybody they had last year. He's the fastest player on the team, but he was pretty much an underneath possession short pass target for Washington last year. Like 80% of his targets were within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. He had 4 catches beyond 20 yards of the line of scrimmage for Washington last year, but 2020 in Carolina with Teddy Bridgewater as the quarterback, not Josh Allen, but Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator, he had 10 deep catches. So I think Brady has a lot of confidence in Samuel, and Samuel did catch a really nice one today where there was it looked like a Kansas City game. There was a blitzer. Khair Elam came completely free in on Josh Allen. Josh Allen eluded him and threw a long pass to Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, so it's already, again, we can't say it enough. It's so early, but getting good looks at these guys who are getting thrown into the mix with new quarterback and just building that chemistry too. We've heard so much about, how camp is a time to do that in different ways. And I really enjoyed the celebrations that guys are doing, which Joe Brady is a proponent of, just getting guys to make sure they're recognizing everyone who is involved throughout the drive when they celebrate the end result of a touchdown. Let's switch over to the defense for a bit. Now, Von Miller had some words today that I think Bills fans will be excited to hear, and that is he is no longer thinking about his knee at all. That knee, of course, kind of held him back last year, even once he was on the field again. He was held without a sack all last season, and he was candid today. He said he knows he's Von Miller. He's going to be measured by how many sacks he gets. That's just kind of how people are going to view the position sometimes in his production. But he's feeling so much healthier. He was interesting in his press conference today, kind of delving into what felt like two conflicting things he had said at different points of. At one point last season, he said he was going to be ready to play week 1, which he was not. And then after the season, in an interview, he said he maybe should not have been out there at all. So in trying to see how he, has those two things at once, he was saying so much of that is his mindset. He's an optimistic guy, and he admitted that can be good or bad at times, where his mindset can win or lose, is what he said. But basically, he was saying how he wanted to be optimistic that he would be back out for week 1, but, realistically, while he was medically cleared, he was not the same player he was. And that's kind of what led him to later saying, maybe I shouldn't have been out there at all, but I wanted to be out there. I wanted to be helping my team, contributing, trying to contribute, whatever it may be. So if that makes sense, that's kind of how he had those two somewhat conflicting ideas, how he worked through that juxtaposition. But he is feeling healthy.
Yeah, I mean, he's Mr. Optimism, right?
Yes.
But now I'm like, some people might say, well, this is revisionist history, but I totally buy Von's explanation for not because of these facts. The facts are he got hurt on Thanksgiving Day. Trey White got hurt on Thanksgiving Day the previous year. Trey White came back exactly 365 days from that injury. And he still wasn't quite the same for the rest of that season. Von Miller came back exactly 10 months from that injury, not 12 months. And then he came back week 6, but it was 10 months from the injury, and he played. So he played a lot sooner than Trey White, and he absolutely was not his old self. So now he is a lot, now we're like 21 months removed from the injury. So it is understandable, is what I'm saying, that Von wouldn't have been himself last year. Now, the question is, he's 35 years old coming back from this injury. So this is, I view Von as this is the whole, like, what are the expectations for the Bills? Well, tell me what Von's going to do. If Von's getting 12 sacks, the bar is the Super Bowl. If Von is washed up at 35, this is a transition year for the Bills. Now, it's not exactly that simple, but it's somewhat that simple.
His one more point on Miller, he said that he felt, kind of a turning point where he was really back to himself was towards the end of the season last year. That's what coaches have said too. They point to that Kansas City game in particular, saying Von looked like himself there. And he made the point today, Miller speaking for himself, not only did he feel good about how he played in the game despite the overall result, but if he can pick up where he left off from there, he thinks he should be really solid this season.
Okay, well, I'm glad he said that, but because if he played pretty good, and I buy the idea that he maybe played a little better, but The defense was horrendous that game. Okay. So that was Kansas City never looked better that whole year, including winning the Super Bowl, than they did against Buffalo in that day. That was before, after. They never looked as good on offense as they did that day against Buffalo, and the defensive line was a total no-show. Let's hope he's right.
We'll turn to a different guy coming back from an injury, and Matt Milano. He was involved in team drills from the first day of camp, which was, I believe it was Brandon Beane was saying that was about as good as they could expect for Milano's trajectory, getting injured in London against Jacksonville early last season, missing, I believe it was 13 games. But he is now back involved with team drills, and that is also a huge boost to the Bills if he can, depending on how close he can look to what he has been in the past.
I thought he looked pretty good today. You expect Milano to be sideline to sideline, anticipate, be there before the play. There was a wide run that he had smothered. There was a pass to the sideline that was completed, but he was all over it. And I thought and again, it's a little harder to tell defense right now, aside from coverage, because they're not really, there's no pads. But and I thought Terrell Bernard, likewise has been quick to the ball, sideline to sideline, the first 2 days. So that's a huge, the defense needs to be a little better than it was good last year, but it needs to be a little better because the offense, we're not sure the offense is going to be a top 5 offense.
It's a small detail, but I like that Milano and Terrell Bernard ran into practice together this morning and were warming up together the whole time. A lot of guys come in individually. Just for people who haven't been into training camp before, there's a tunnel they run through, and Milano and Bernard came in like side by side the whole time. And, communication is so key between them that I thought that was just a nice gesture to see.
Training camp rolls on here in Pittsford at St. John Fisher University. The Bills will be practice again Friday, off Saturday, practice all next week, leading up into the Friday evening practice at Highmark Stadium, the return of the blue and red scrimmage. Not scrimmage, it's a practice. So let's take a moment here on our third segment and discuss a little bit of what we're looking for in the coming week.
Yeah, there's so much to watch. I think this is, sometimes these long days and these dorm nights make me forget how exciting training camp is just to start to get a taste of these teams. But I'm excited to watch what goes on at safety. They've been rotating there a little bit, and that's something Sean McDermott said that, there are going to be different positions they rotate at. So I think just kind of seeing as they solidify guys there, what that'll be like.
Yeah, Damar Hamlin took the first reps with the starters on the first day of practice. Mike Edwards was who we are expecting to be a starter with Taylor Rapp, was the starter there today, the second day of practice on defense. One thing, and then, as next week, as they get into padded practices, I think two fun things for fans to watch for, usually at one end of the field, usually the far end of the field, or if you're at the practice, the left end of the field, will be the one-on-one drills with pads between the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen. And then another thing to look for next week is the 9-on-7 padded running drills, so they can actually get real running plays practiced with pads. They don't tackle people all the way to the ground, but it's real blocking and thud, wrap them up, but don't tackle them. So those are really where the real football gets a little more real. The one-on-one drills, they'll do it one-on-one, offensive linemen versus the defensive linemen, tackles versus ends. Obviously there's a case where we get to see Von Miller go full speed. So all eyes will be on that. A couple other people I'm really intrigued to watch. The veteran backup tackle guard Lael Collins, who was starting a quality right tackle for the Cowboys for a long time, has had injuries. Is he going to be good enough to be the backup to Spencer Brown at right tackle? And he also is going to play some guard. And then another guy, Travis Clayton, the rugby player from England, who has never played football. He's actually gotten some snaps out there with the third offensive line at right tackle, picked up a blitz today. So he's pointing in the right direction, which is the first good thing for a guy who's never played football. And they're putting him out there for snaps. I have not seen, I'm not sure, maybe I've missed him, but I've not seen Gable Stevenson, the Olympic gold medal wrestler, at defensive tackle in 11-on-11 drills yet. But I want to see him in the one-on-one drills because he's got Olympic level quickness.
Yeah, those one-on-ones are some of my favorites too. So definitely something to look forward to. We'll be back podcasting throughout training camp. Make sure you're checking next week, but also make sure you're going to buffalonews.com for observations and stories every single day from camp. We have so much coverage for y'all. So be checking online and be subscribing wherever you get your podcasts for more information.
Treat your team to the most flavorful pizza on game day at Picasso's Pizza. 4 great Western New York locations: Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Picasso's. We are Buffalo's Pizza since 1980. Order online today at picassospizza.net.